Hey, welcome back. This is episode 5. So if you watched my video last week, you probably noticed it was very low energy and just not the best content I've made. So I wanted to explain how that experience managed to get me to shift my mindset and become unbeatable when it comes to exhaustion and lack of focus, and how this week I've made a lot more progress, probably the most progress I've made since episode 1, and I'm very excited to share the most important things when it comes to mindset, motivation, focus and purpose. You might be thinking, so it's not like you just woke up at the beginning of this week and was able to focus? Well, it kind of was, and that leads me to my first piece of advice, which is sleep. Now, before you click off this video, because that sounds so obvious, it wasn't solely the sleep that helped me. It was actually the fact that before I'd gone to bed on Sunday, I'd listened to about 2 hours of podcast content about what my goals were, which was primarily making money and covering the idea that to become successful in anything, you have to be consistent, you have to be focused, and you have to have the discipline to get rid of anything that stops you from having that focus and that consistency. Now, it sounds a bit obvious, but being told that I need to have focus to be able to achieve the goals that I want, and having those goals put right in front of me and discussed and going through my brain before I went to sleep did, I think, help me get that focus in the morning. And so since Monday, I have been able to have a lot better focus and a lot better consistency with the progress towards each of my goals that I've had. I realised at the beginning of last week that if I was going to be defeated by this exhaustion, I had two options, and that was either to stay down or to get up. And the fact that I pushed through that week and continued trying to make progress with my side hustle, reading, working, going to the gym, and just acquiring more knowledge, that has got me to the point where now I can say that this has been probably the most productive I've felt throughout this entire challenge. And I know for sure that if I had not pushed through last week, I would have just been going deeper into the exhaustion, fatigue, and a lack of focus that I had last week. The really fascinating part about making this video has been that the 3 tips that I promised I'd give you, the way that I had made that difference in my focus and motivation was all up in here. And so it wasn't like some massive change. I didn't reorganize a schedule or anything. It was just all up in here. And now I'm having to put that onto paper and try to plan it and make it make sense. And that's just been a very interesting and challenging experience, which I love. And I want to now go on to the second tip, which is, I knew from the beginning of last week, as soon as I started to feel this exhaustion, that I was not going to give up, because it didn't seem to me like it would actually be worth giving up, because I had that purpose and that drive and I knew exactly what I was doing, and I saw that exhaustion as an actual sign of progress. And by the end of the week, I kind of knew that that week of slightly less productivity might have actually been gaining momentum towards this week of much more focus and productivity. And so I believe that gathering this momentum and allowing myself to reflect might have actually made this week what it has been. So by focusing that week on learning how to make money, learning how to make YouTube videos, and just expanding my knowledge, I was able to kind of take a step back instead of being in active pursuit of these things. So why did I start this journey, and why did I start this YouTube channel? Well, I realised that to be able to pursue what I believed to be my purpose in life, I knew that financial and vocational freedom would be an essential part of the puzzle. And I realised that keeping to the traditional path and following societal norms wouldn't give me the exceptional results that I was after. Doing what I'd always done would definitely hold me back. And there's something else that would also hold me back, and that was the perception of an idealised life. It's not all about achieving success, but most of the time we just want others to actually see that success, right? And that's where it gets tricky, because you end up with this fear of failing and not living up to that ideal, and it can become an unhealthy roadblock. We forget that failure is in fact one of the most important parts of learning and discovery. With so much information and opportunities online, it's definitely one of the easiest generations to get knowledge and start something, but a lot of people are just too afraid to start. For years and years, I'd been watching these videos on YouTube about how to make money as a teenager and how to start side hustles and businesses, and it dawned on me that those videos have millions of views, right? And although not everyone who watches it is going to take action, it was kind of unattractive to me that so many people had seen it and had that information. And so I knew that while all my friends were going after regular day jobs and things like that, I wanted to see how I could try something different that wouldn't necessarily be too risky, but putting all of my knowledge into real action and starting this journey without hesitation. So at the beginning of this summer, I made the decision to invest my time in the most productive and growth building things that I could do. I've saved a couple thousand into my bank account and have been very disciplined with spending that up to this point. And so because I believed I had that discipline to save money, I knew that if I was able to build more money and more streams of income, that there was a lot of potential for growth. And so I had originally started this series with trying to look into freelance video editing opportunities online, and I realised that there was so much competition out there. After looking into that for 2 weeks, I gave up on it. And once I gave up on that, I realised that it wasn't necessarily the best option, because I'd have to work hours to be able to get that money rather than working on something that's an actual asset. That led me to the course which I'm currently editing, which my family is building. It's a course about maths, and so I'm being paid to edit that for the hours, but I'll also get a percentage of the income and the profit from the course once it starts selling. And so that way, it's not only a form of income, but also a form of passive income once it's been completed. Third change I made that allowed me to refocus was motivation. And the podcast I listened to not only gave me ideas for potential steps in the future, but also gave me the motivation and the purpose to take those steps. And just by listening to informative content and supplying my mind with challenging questions as I was listening, rather than wasting my time because I was low energy and unfocused, kind of subconsciously told myself that I was already on the right track, going in the right direction. And so just by slightly motivating myself, I was able to increase that momentum, as I spoke about earlier, and make that change actually happen. So to sum it up, if you're finding it difficult to regain that focus and that motivation, or even if you haven't started pursuing a journey, what I'd recommend you do is start by writing down what your goals are, what your purpose is, and write down those goals for your next year, next 5 years, and your next 10 years. And by the time you get to that 10-year stage, you're really starting to wonder what even is life, because it's very difficult to visualize and navigate your goals because there's so much that could have happened in that time span. But even though it might not be realistic, it's definitely good to get you thinking about what your next step is going to be, and looking at that really long-term goal will give you that reason to pursue those first little steps. Now that you've figured out what that purpose is and where you want to go with it, once you started taking action, you're going to eventually get to a point of low energy and maybe burnout. But what I recommend you do during that time, like I did, is to reflect on where you want to go in the future. Think about why that burnout has happened, what changes can you make, what mindset shift might you need to make, and continue pursuing that goal. With that said, I wanted to do my best in making this video and giving you the most valuable information that I can. So thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. I'll see you next week with episode 6. Adios. You don't need to subscribe.